isn't a season for visitors to the Himalayan town of Leh, despite the fact that it hasn't been as cold this year. Situated at an altitude of 11,500 feet, the capital of one of India's largest, holds little significance for us as our eyes are set on what lies beyond the great mountains which envelop this touristy town. Siachen, a household name, a place where slick, glitzy videos are shot which present a glamorous edge to what otherwise is a mind-numbing experience that our army men undergo. Before we take to the skies and onwards, a quick check on our health, followed by a quicker breakfast. Our vehicle is the Made in India Advanced Light Helicopter Dhruv, purchased in bulk by both the Army and the Air Force. From approximately 11,500 feet, we will be climbing towards the Siachen base camp located at about 13,000 feet. That's the first step on our journey to the world's highest battlefield. This twin-engine aircraft performs a variety of tasks, and fortunately for the Army, even at dizzying heights like these. India today is on board a special Indian Army Advanced Light Helicopter Dhruv, and we are starting our journey to the world's highest battlefield. It's a special and a very rare access that India today has secured, coming, as you would understand, at a very, very sensitive time for the Indian Army. Why are we here? What is our motto and effort all about? Our effort is to get you sensitized with what is, after all, the world's highest battlefield, the problems, the issues, the techniques, the spirit, and how do you overcome what nature puts forward in your way. For the next hour, our only companions were mountains and their splendid isolation. Though we flew over about 3 settlements, there were hardly signs of human activity or existence that could be spotted. Silently and gradually the landscape changed colors. What appeared harmless brown and rocky was now turning to a menacing white. The great glacier cannot be too far. We are actually at a very interesting geographical intersection. We are now entering the area where the Saltoro range and the Karakoram range in a sense merge, and on top of it lies the Siachen glacier. I also want to tell you that on this side, that's my right hand side, general area, you can take a look, not immediately but not too far, is where the Pakistan occupied Kashmir area lies. And as I said, a very interesting part of this region in particular is that not only do we border the Pakistanis, but on my left hand side we border the Chinese as well. My camera person will just show you again, it isn't the exact Chinese side, but it's in this general direction that the Chinese borders lie. Understanding and then making others understand the glacier isn't everyone's cup of tea, and it is for this reason alone that we break our journey at the base camp. The Army has nominated this man, Colonel P.S. Rakwal, to guide us. Having spent nearly 2 years here, this artillery officer has been to every single of the undisclosed number of posts the Army maintains to man this ever-shifting body of ice. In what is neither rock nor soil but a mass of ice, weather plays its own game. Winters do not end before it is April, and they start before you can say summer. It was in April 1984, along this seemingly unending network of crevices, rocks and nothingness left uninhabited for 37 years from 1947, that the Indian Army preempted the moves of its Pakistani counterpart and raced to the top. The pilot radios in. He needs to convey something to me. As we climb up to almost 21,000 feet, chances are we may not feel just fine. Sure enough, breathing became difficult and there were simply no chances to take. If things were difficult for us inside the chopper, on the ground the boots were firmly in place. It was business as usual. We came across a number of staging posts which serve as breakpoints for Jawans who have no option but to march up from the base camp, in some cases for as much as 21 days. In fact, the post which went down was about 19 days on foot. Things don't look too good for us. A storm is coming.
The weather is going bad and it will be difficult to progress ahead, and we'll need to move back to the location.
So you cannot take any chance with the weather out here, sir?
No, it's a deciding factor, and because of these factors, considering these factors and the limitations of the aircraft, we cannot take any chance. It has been snowing at the location where we are going, so we'll have to turn back.
When you say the weather is turning bad, what exactly happened, sir?
The wind speeds change, the direction change, the turbulence increases, or the visibility or for the pilots is reducing. These are the major deciding factors based on the considering the capability of the machine. The pilots decide whether they can further go ahead or not.
Left with no option, we retrace our steps. Our goal to get a first-hand feel of the operation underway at the stricken post came undone. On our way, we saw the famous Bila Fondla, the place where the first Indian Army patrol landed on the ominous winter morning of April the 13th, 1984. Since 6 a.m. that day, Operation Meghdoot has been on as among the longest running operations of the Army. While it has time and again validated itself by ensuring denial of territory to the adversary, it has come at a price. On December 11 last year, the government informed the Parliament that a total of 33 officers, 54 junior commissioned officers and 782 other ranks had succumbed in this ongoing operation. While this man's story evoked prayers, there were those who carried on unsung at mind-numbing altitude, roughly 6.5 kilometers above sea level, or simply put, at the top of a 2,200-storied building. India Today secured special access to document that very effort. We landed at the Siachen base camp, the gateway to the Great Glacier. Nothing, just nothing can go up there without passing through the filters installed here. From training before induction to that after completing one's tenure, the centre also prepares men on aspects like avalanche rescue and icecraft, among other things. When tragedy struck on the 3rd of February, this logistics-cum-training setup, located at approximately 11,000 feet, also became the nerve center where the drivers and the planners of the operation assembled and did their bit. In this tragedy, what must not be forgotten is the counter, the response which was given to this tragedy. It was in many ways perhaps the most unprecedented operation, the scale, the height and the effort involved. In this particular segment, we go deep into this particular operation. We see who the leaders were, we see who the men were and how they all came together and got it done. Lieutenant General S.K. Patyal is the man who heads Army's one-of-its-kind formation, the 14 Corps, which looks at both the Indo-Pak as well as the Sino-Indian front lines as a part of its charter. Present here to oversee the effort, he is the senior-most man with his boots on the ground.
This wasn't an avalanche, it was a snow wall that broke off from the Bana hill feature and it slided and fell on the post. We have a procedure where early in the morning, around between 0500 hours to 0530 hours, we make calls to all posts and find out if all is well. When we didn't get a response at 05:15 hours, the nearest post is which is 2 hours away from the post. A party from there went to identify as to what has happened. The temperatures there go below -50 degrees by evening. During the day they are -25 to -30 degrees. If you have a wind blowing, then it leads to a wind chill factor where the temperatures further reduce by 5-10 degrees. You have blizzards there. Then you have whiteout conditions where during these two periods you just cannot do any work outside your tent.
In responding, the army almost declared a war of sorts, a response of unmatched intensity. Ground-penetrating detectors of the type recently used in the Pathankot episode, Doppler and infrared radars, trained personnel, choppers were all pulled in. It didn't stop at that. Previously deployed men, those who'd served at the stricken post, were called in. An officer even said they replayed movies featuring avalanches to fine-tune their tactics.
More than 25 feet deep from the surface, where we were able to identify a telephone cable, which then led us to dig horizontally to more than 4 to 5 feet, where then we got onto the people who were buried inside this debris. The army never gave up. So since 3rd early morning, we continued our search for these people throughout the day, throughout the night.
It is lunchtime, ideally meant as a break, but as we found out, the break was only from being seated inside the operations room. The conversation was about nothing if not the mission. There are calls to attend, there is information to seek, to give. There are 9 families after all, waiting to be reunited with the mortal remains of their loved ones. While the role of men and technology can never be overstated, one particular piece of equipment occupies almost the same stature, these birds with their rotors. Their contribution, it can be said without the risk of exaggerating, gave the rescuers access and success. One side of the story is that of those 200 odd men who stood there on the ground working day and night in this rather unprecedented operation. The other side is the aerial side. Hundreds of sorties were flown into areas which are considered to be extremely dangerous.
The terrain here is so treacherous, high altitudes varying from 15,000 to 20,000 feet. The machine which we are flying is operating at its extremes. The power margins are very minimal. So last 6 days our whole only aim has been to get these boys out at any cost, although keeping flight safety at its paramount. And we had to really apply all our calculations, all our flight safety, all our training into play. Now the problems which comes now is coupled with the altitude is the weather. The most important thing is to fight the weather. The temperatures are in negatives. The weight carrying capacity reduces. The power margin reduces. To drop a load which could have been done in planes, a much more load which could have been dropped, takes number of more shuttles to do that. So that causes fatigue.
If there is one man whose shoulders bear the brunt in particular, then it is Colonel V. Hariharan, who leads the all-important Siachen base camp. From being the first responder to the host for the ongoing operation, he is that vital link the army cannot do without if it wants its RIT to run along the Great White Glacier.
So the only difference which we had as far as our planning and preparation was that we had to mount it in a very large scale and at that altitude. So that was the only basic difference. Otherwise, we were prepared for it. Converted this room behind as our ops room, manned it 24/7, and all the resources were pulled in. We need to have guys who were fit for 20,000 feet, and that was a real tough job. There were young officers, there were men who said, "Sab mere ko jane do," and that kind of things. And that is what moves people. That is what is the basic emotional building block on which our organization works. It's not over for us. It won't get over for us very soon. It will take very long time because we'll have to ensure that the mortal remains, the angels go back to their home. And it's only then we'll feel our job is over.
As we left for the place we came from, the men stood atop the icy heights with the extricated mortal remains of their colleagues waiting for the weather to clear. Till that happens, they will stand along to ensure they bid farewell to their fallen colleagues. They will see them off and will not move no matter how long it takes. The operation will carry on. We've seen what we had to, and we are now on our way out of Siachen. I have a confession to make of my own. Before I came here and got introduced to what is it like, I would often wonder, just why are we here? Why should human beings be present, soldiers be present in places where the nature doesn't want them to be? However, as I now see the investment, the infrastructure, and most importantly, the sacrifices which have gone in to making the operation Meghdut one of the longest ever running operations in Indian Army's history, the question in my mind is that why should we vacate all of these areas and for whom? Nevertheless, a reporter's own views are of little relevance. In this segment, we take you to the heart of the conflict which brings the Indian Army to this frontier, and we put before you both the contrasting views for you, the viewer, to make a decision. While the action is on the ground, what drives the action remains firmly behind the closed doors, secured by toll gates at places like these. Though claimed by both parties, records show Siachen as a part of the erstwhile kingdom of Jammu and Kashmir, the kingdom which acceded to India fully and irrevocably on the 26th day of October in 1947. Pakistan's large-scale ingress, and an illegal one at that, complicated matters so much so that while the line of control could be delineated based on positions held, nothing could be done beyond the point known as NJ 9842. Perhaps a measure of the sheer difficulty, the fact is this location saw neither a permanent occupation nor action in the subsequent wars the two countries fought in 1965 and 1971. Since April of 1984, when a well-informed Indian army marched ahead to permanently occupy these heights, the adversary has changed. Weather has consumed close to 900 lives of our army personnel, and while the army claims to have progressively reduced the count and increased the comfort level of those deployed, many, like Professor Jacob, believe time has come to junk such an approach.
Let the government of India bring out a white paper on the strategic advantages there, on the resources there, on as to why we should be there, and if we find merit in that, we will all stand by that. Otherwise, we will critique that because it makes no sense to me. You make a statement that there is advantage. Show us what is the advantage. If you look at facts, if you look at just the reality of the geography and the facts in that Siachen Glacier and Saltoro Ridge area, you will realize that the area simply does not give you either offensive or defensive advantage. The whole argument that once you vacate the territory, the Chinese and the Pakistanis will sort of join together their forces and come into Leh and probably go into the Jammu and Kashmir, rest of Jammu and Kashmir, is complete nonsense. That's simply not going to happen. Today you have enough equipments, today you have enough technology to do enough surveillance and to make sure that once you vacate the territory, no one comes into that place.
While some believe the leadership has shied away and in doing so pushed many soldiers to the edge, there are those like senior journalist Nitin Gokhale, hardly unfamiliar with the Siachen story, who believe the entire argument to be nothing but hogwash.
Indian military will have to be there, and it provides the depth. Remember, Siachen is like a wedge between Aksai Chin and Saksham Valley, where on your east is Aksai Chin, where China is present, and Saksham Valley is also with China, courtesy Pakistan. Now it will allow them to link up and start creating designs on Leh and Kargil if Indian troops are not present on Siachen. No technology can really empower any army to quickly redeploy. It's not going to happen because unless you are acclimatized, unless you are familiarize yourself with that situation, you can never get deployed there. So it's out of the question.
Hardly anything, meanwhile, changes for the man on the ground. Isolation, wilderness, and a duty to protect day in and day out. In our journey, we started at mean sea level and went up to heights of over 21,000 feet. In doing so, in this limited duration, we've actually broken some of the rules of engagement, or so they tell us. Nevertheless, at the end of this journey, what we can tell you is yes, Siachen is a place where we shouldn't have been. But given the reality of the times that we live in, and of course the neighborhood, it is a place where we couldn't have not been. With camera person Vinod Kumar, this is Jugal Purohit signing off from Leh. Thank you for watching.
General Dalbir Singh has condoled the passing away of braveheart Lance Naik Hanumantappa, saying that the soldier in him will continue to inspire generations.
Now, Mr. Rijiju, we're looking at a lot of awards Wapsi that's happening just now. Started with the writers, went on to academics, historians, scientists.